Welcome everybody today to our solar and electric vehicle community information event. We're here at the Rhyll Market, January 20, 2023. My name is Michael Whelan. I'm a member of Totally Renewable Phillip Island, and we've joined with the Rhyll Community Association to put on this information event today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today, the Bunurong people, and their neighbours, the Gunai Kurnai. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today. Thank you to our solar businesses who are here, BWD and Island Energy. Thank you to our electric vehicle owners. We have 15 electric vehicles here, 9 different makes of vehicle. Thank you for coming and sharing your information. Thank you to our volunteers of Totally Renewable Phillip Island, the Rhyll Community Association, community groups who have supported us by loaning equipment, and local businesses who have also supported the event. Now to our program today. We have a program of 2 speakers and a panel for discussion and questions. Our first speaker is Bryce Gaton. Bryce is an EV writer and commentator and a transition consultant to electric vehicles. Then we'll hear from Christian Slattery. Christian is the Climate Emergency Officer for Bass Coast Shire Council. Christian will be telling us about the plans the Shire has for rolling out an electric vehicle network of charging across the Shire. And we'll finish with our panel, and I'll introduce the panel members at that time. I'll hand over to Bryce Gaton.
First off, how many people here actually own an EV? I'm driving one here today. I'm getting a few hands. It's actually nice, as I do these presentations, it's getting to be more and more hands. When I first started doing these back in 2010, when we did the first EV conference, it was all about the coming car, the IMEV and the Nissan Leaf, and we were talking entirely about conversion of vehicles. And now, as you can see, there's a whole range of cars coming, or here, and a whole pile more coming. However, in Australia, we're still less than 4% new car sales. So there's still a lot of people out there that haven't seen or had a lot to do with EVs yet. So I'm going to explain a little bit of EV 101 to begin with and just put the EV transition in context. So first up, don't hit the wrong button. First up is, what is an EV? First up, there are basically 4 types of electric vehicle. There's the simple type EV, battery electric vehicle. We have a battery, an electric motor, and it drives the wheels, and you plug in to recharge, and that's the BEV. As all us EV people have a bit of a bad habit of using acronyms and things, so I thought I might as well explain the acronyms to begin with. You're also probably fairly familiar with the plug-in hybrids that have a smaller battery and a plug-in to recharge that battery, and they have a petrol motor to take you an extended range. And there are PHEV, PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Hybrid meaning it's a combination of electric and petrol, or electric and diesel perhaps. Those 2 are called also plug-in vehicles. So they have a plug, so you can actually run on electricity exclusively or petrol for the plug-in hybrid. After that, you have the hybrid electric vehicle, which has no plug. It's basically an energy-saving device. It does have an electric motor. It has a much smaller battery again, and it basically saves fuel by, rather than wasting energy by actually using lots of heat and noise and wearing of your brake pads, you'll actually put some of that energy as by turning the motor back into a generator and putting electricity back into the battery. So that's how they derive their electric background. So they're a hybrid electric vehicle, HEVs. Toyota Prius is one of the early ones that turned up, so everyone's quite familiar with those. By the way, when I'm talking about the bans on new petrol diesel vehicles coming up around the world, they're included. So only the plug-ins cross that hurdle when those bans come in. Hybrids will no longer be able to be sold new in many places around the world, starting soon. And then there's what's called the hydrogen car, although better known as a fuel cell electric car. They're still an electric car, they still have a battery, but they use hydrogen and convert it through a chemical reaction to create electricity, which drives the electric motor. They still use the battery just like the hybrids do for the slowing down and for faster acceleration, because the fuel cell doesn't, like a diesel motor, doesn't like high, changing speed all the time. It likes a fairly even speed, so it doesn't, and also doesn't regenerate electricity, so you can't recreate hydrogen as you slow down. So the plug-in fuel cell electric vehicle, or FCEV, is also known as a hydrogen car. I'll talk a little bit more about that later as whether it has a future or not. And I used to have those 4. And then Hyzon trucks came along and they've started building and experimenting with electric trucks here in Victoria, actually the old RACV building out in Dandenong, or near Dandenong, and they're doing a plug-in fuel cell electric vehicle, just to really annoy me. So I had to add another slide. So whether they take off the ground or get off the ground or not, I don't know, but that category exists when it comes to trucks. It's looking like, even when it comes to electric trucks, and a lot of people sort of hyping hydrogen in that area, Scania and MAN have already said they're not bothering with electric trucks anymore. Sorry, hydrogen fuel cell electric trucks. They've already worked out they're not economic. So it's quite possible they too will die. But anyway, we shall see. And just as a reminder, electric cars aren't a new phenomenon. Back when the electric cars first started, back around 1900, roughly, in very, very rough numbers, a third of cars were petrol, a third of cars were external combustion or steam, and a third of new cars were electric. And this was a 1906 electric car. And people actually really liked them because they were quiet, noise-free, not smelly. They did have the slight problem that the electricity was in fact very limited in the world at that stage, and it was only the biggest cities in the world and only the central business districts of those had electricity. So if you went outside that area, you were pretty stuffed for actually finding somewhere to recharge. Whereas petrol, you could dump 44-gallon drums of petrol, or as later on 2-gallon tins, you could take them anywhere. So the petrol car, so the Henry Ford and the Model T Ford basically won the battle at that stage because electricity just wasn't quite there yet. And they had quite good ranges, but they had all the same sort of issues that the early EVs this time around had, but we have now left all those issues behind. By the way, I keep talking about cars, and that's what we're talking about here today, but it's happening in every form of transport. So trucks are going electric. The first electric trucks from Tesla have started being handed over last month. The Bobcat actually demonstrated January last year, an all-electric Bobcat. Who hasn't tried to be run over by electric Deliveroo or whatever, or peddling around all our cities? There's just everywhere. Electric bicycles are a dime a dozen now. Motorbikes, yes. Harley Davidson actually built an electric motorbike called the Live Wire. There's one just there, in fact. And it's, yep, and might actually get you up to, what do you like about it? There you go. So if you want to talk more about the electric motorbikes, there's the man to speak to. Yes, there are electric planes. Norway have actually said by 2040 all short-haul flights must be electric, and there's a number of electric planes coming out. And I'm actually about to write an article for Renew magazine for the next edition. It'll be coming out in March, April I should say, on electric aviation, and that's going to be quite a big topic in the next 5 to 10 years. There are actually flying cars that will become autonomous. That's called the Black Fly. Basically, all of these things I'm showing, by the way, have actually been built, and most of them are actually available for sale. So you can buy an electric plane, you can buy an electric truck. Bobcat, not quite yet. That Black Fly, that one that just came up, that is actually available for sale in America. And it's vertical takeoff and landing, and it's quite amazing if you want to look at the video of that. Autonomous cars, that thing is actually built here in Victoria, in eastern Melbourne. It's actually overseas at the moment being trialled, so you can't buy one of those, but that's one of the few that's on this page you can't buy. Electric buses are all around the world, going everywhere. One of the Chinese cities, I like the statistic, they've changed over their entire fleet of 10,000 buses to full electric, and that's the C40 group of cities around the world. Small cities like Los Angeles and London, Paris, have all said they will only buy electric buses from 2025, even Auckland. Yes, there are electric ferries that I always quite laugh at when New South Wales were saying that we're going to have green electricity for all our transport, and all our transport will pay for green, solar panel, wind, whatever. It will all be electric, all renewable energy driving our public transport. And I remember someone rang up on called in line on the radio and said to the minister, "Oh, well, what about the ferries?" And he went, "Oh, well, we might do some of the smaller ones, but if we put batteries in a bigger one, they might sink." He obviously hadn't heard of this one, the Ampera, and there's a dozen or more of them now getting out, and there's heaps of orders. They're about 80% cheaper to run, easy, quiet, no fumes, really clean. The people that are running them love them. And general equipment, the councils are actually starting to buy those Ego, I think they are, or something like that brand. They will run all day, recharge on a 10 amp power point overnight. With the coming generation of electric cars that have a vehicle to load, so you can plug into the car to a 240 volt outlet, they can even recharge them during the day if they needed to. Transitions, by the way, we're working through one now. We have been through a number of them in the past, but they can happen quite quickly. This is what happened in the last transport transition. 1900, April 5th Avenue, New York. One horseless carriage, one petrol vehicle, all horses and carts. Notice the next shot, there's a lot more on the road, and there's one horse and cart 13 years later. They can happen fast. And we're used to that with a number of things, mobile phones, flushing toilets. You go to Our World in Data, you can play with all sorts of facts and figures. It's quite a fun website. This is just a website. It follows a typical curve, starts off slowly, takes off quite quickly, and then tapers off towards the end. And electric cars, well, this is what we're seeing at the moment. Last year, 2020, so about 2 years now, 2021 was about just under 9%, all new car sales in the world. Last year, 2022, was about 12%. So it's following that same trajectory. Australia, we are 0.6% in 2020. 2021, we were about 1 point something. And last year, we were 3.1 or 2, I think. We'll probably be about 4 plus this year. So that's, the transition is happening. It will happen quite quickly once it gets going. And as you can see today, there's a whole pile of cars already turning up, and we're only at that very low percentage here. Overseas, in Europe, it's like 1 in 4 cars is getting to new cars are electric. Okay, a bit of terminology. EV/SE, basically otherwise known as a car charger, electric vehicle supply equipment. 2 types, or actually sort of 3 types. First 2 on your left, the plug-in ones that go into a power point. They pretty much all new cars come with one. There's 1 or 2 that don't. So just check the fact sheets that I write that are on the AVA website. I'll talk about a bit later. But I try to make sure that I include whether it has or hasn't. Or more to the point, if it hasn't got one, I'm actually starting to make a point of it. There's a couple of cars that have just recently come to the market that don't come with a charger. So they're about $400 if you need to buy a portable one. Otherwise, most cars have them. That one at the very bottom left, if you're travelling interstate, like I did to Perth and back recently, which is not so recently now, about 7 months ago, that's a very handy one because I can set it from anything, an ordinary power point, right up to maximum charge rate of my car. And the 2 in the middle there, they're the sort of ones that you would put in at home. The one with the long lead, that's a typical Tesla one, but I always say, when you're putting one in at home, buy one with the lead attached. It's just much easier to just hang it up when you finish. The middle one there, that green and white one, is the sort of thing that councils and public AC charging do, and they have a socket and carry a spare lead to plug in. If you have that at home, it's really annoying. So what do I do with the lead? I've got to dry it, I've got to put it in the boot, or put it in the house, unlock the house again. For home use, I always say use a tethered one, but the councils and things quite like that middle one, but you have to have your own lead. The lead itself is about $250. For a portable EVSE, as portable chargers, they're start around $400. And these 2 on the right, they're the equivalent of a petrol pump. These are the DC fast chargers. For the older vehicles, like the Leafs down there, they actually have 2 ports, a big round one that was used for DC. For more modern cars, they actually have, now the plug war has been one. The one that's in the Leaf is no longer pretty much used except for 1 or 2 cars, and it's pretty much a legacy system. The system now is all in one socket, and if you look at the Teslas and every other car here, they have what's called a CCS, combined charging system. They have the AC shaped bit at the top and 2 extra big pins at the bottom, and that's where the DC charging, and this is where the real fast charging happens. So that orange one there is actually built in Australia. Tritium are one of the biggest suppliers of fast DC fast chargers in the world, and it's a Queensland company. And that other one there is one of the big overseas companies. That Tritium one will do about 50 kilowatts, so it's already heaps faster than your home charging. You'll get about 7 kilowatts, but I'll talk all about the speeds in a moment. But home charging, you won't pull more than 32 amps on a car charging circuit, but you need an electrician to have a quick look at your wiring just to make sure it'll be handy or cope with it. Again, I'll come back to that later. So that's charging. Charging is the big change when you're coming to EVs. Before I get to that one, people keep asking me about when can I run my house on my car. Bi-directional charging means I can put power into the car to charge it and drive around, or I can pull power out of it. And there's a number of cars here now that actually are starting to make it available. The BYD, as an example, actually does it. You can have a vehicle to load, and that's what the BYD does, and a couple of other cars that are coming on the market do. The Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6 also do it. You can plug an adapter in, and it will give you 10, 15 amps, so it can run electric kettles, induction cooktops, whatever at your campsite. A really handy feature for those that like going away camping. People love it. But that's the vehicle to load. That's one of 3 stages in this bi-directional stuff. By the way, if anybody wants a copy of these slides, my email address will be at the end. Just email me and I'll send you a PDF version. But there's a lot of detail here, but I'm trying to get through a sort of a EV 101, and then I'll talk about the cars that are around now. Vehicle to home, vehicle V2H, that's where it feeds your house, but it doesn't feed to the street. And that's the next layer up, and that'll be available within 6 to 12 months, quite possibly in a lot of cars now. The next generation Volvos in 12 months' time will have it. The VWs are supposedly coming here with it. And the top of the tree is vehicle to grid, like your solar systems now feed power to the grid, so you can recharge the car at low charge time, and then you can feed back to the grid at any time. So the supply authorities will really enjoy that one, where they can actually balance out the loads, and they may offer you really good tariffs to do it. We shall see whether they do or not. For fleet businesses, they will love it, because they can offer a third of their 20, 30 cars at a time to do it. Whether domestic ones will do it, I don't know. We shall see. But that's the 3 layers, and all together they're called V2X, V to something. Currently, only the Chadamo port does it, although, as I said, the others are about to do it, but it lost the plug war. And that combined charging system, the CCS one that's in all the other cars, is developing it, but it will be about 2025. That's the roadmap they've set up. So about 2026, you'll be able to buy the systems to do it. So if you're really, really keen on this idea, hold your horses until about 2025, 26. The cars will start being available 24, 25, and 26 will be the time to start buying the system to get your electrician to install it. Now I can get back to where I was talking about the refueling. We're used to this model. We drive around to all our destinations, and then we go out of our way to a petrol station. That's our sort of usual run-of-the-mill sort of way, what we're used to. Very different when you come to EVs. Your destination is your charging stop. So most of the time, 89%, it's at home. Otherwise, it could be the library, the shops. There are lots of places where these chargers are popping up, and that's where you do your charging. So it's a very decentralized model now. That's that one. So the key point is, it's a different paradigm. Once you get your head around that, you very quickly learn to hate petrol stations, because they're a damn nuisance. They have to keep going and finding, and then pull up and refuel and go pay. Whereas all I do now is I plug in at home, and if I'm heading interstate, say to Perth or whatever, that's when I use these DC fast chargers. And I just use an app, and it automatically bills my credit card. Basically, think of it more like a mobile phone now, rather than stand there in the wind, rain, heat, whatever, as a petrol pump attendant. Once you get that change, it's a really nice, different way of life. Key thing is, though, how fast do I need to charge? Well, if you're doing less than 100 k's a day, and the average commute for a big city is about 30 kilometres, overnight charging will easily do it. 30 kilometres, you're probably recharged, even off a power point, in about 2-3 hours. And putting in a 15 amp power point, it's about $500 up for an electrician to put one of those in. It must go straight back to the switchboard, and it must use a different type of safety switch than the normal one. But that's about the only difference. The same price safety switch, but it's just a slightly different one. By the way, don't rely on power points alone. If you're doing hundreds of kilometres and you're using that poor power point all the time, especially if it's an older power point, they melt. They're not meant to draw 10, 15 amps constantly for 8, 10, 12 hours if you're doing hundreds of kilometres of recharging every day. They will eventually die, and I have lots of photographs and examples of melted ones. That 3-pin plug there was the one that was in the PowerPoint, and then he also did the big no-no of using an extension lead all the time, and it melted as well, so it was a beautiful example of, that's why I like putting that one in. So yes, you can use a PowerPoint occasionally, Airbnb or whatever, yep, just plug in, it'll be fine. But if you're doing it all the time, I would recommend, for much more pleasant charging experience as well, put in a proper dedicated charger. As I said, for the Kona, I have something like that, and 400 k's, I can get a full recharge overnight in 9 hours using that one. and they're about $1,500 up. The unit's about $700-800 for the cheapest ones, and you can spend up to $4,000 if you want one that's all singing, all dancing. Now, one that does the phone apps and all sorts of stuff there. Now, how far can I go on my charge is the constant question I get, and it depends on which testing system has been used, and there are three main ones. In Australia, we still use ADR, Australian Design Rule 81/02, which is effectively the old European system, and the manufacturers learned how to game that one. Dieselgate, if you've heard of that with VW, they sort of went the other side of the line and just completely broke the law. But lots of the manufacturers have worked out how to game the system and get it to give them really unrealistic numbers, and that's where the NEDC has been dumped in Europe. So for the Nissan Leaf, for instance, NEDC, they say the original 40 kilowatt one will do 315 k's. Nobody gets that. The new European standard, WLTP, is quite a realistic one. If you're driving around town and sort of a bit of outer suburban work, you'll pretty much hit that. And my Kona, I'll actually exceed that one. So my Kona has 484. When I recharged up last night, it was showing 550k range. So because I've been beetling around town a lot. So it basically bases its range estimate on what I've been doing recently. I've probably knocked it back to about 440 at a guess, because I've driven to Moe and then back to here today. And that's where the third one comes in, the US EPA standard. And that one, obviously Americans drive further and faster in their country, more like us, if you're going out of town. So their standard is quite realistic. So if you're doing a lot of outer suburban and country driving, the US EPA number is the best one to pick. And the fact sheets that I write and are hosted at the AEVA website, I generally quote exactly that table. I'll put all three down there so you can work it out. So you'll see, oh, the manufacturer's given me this quite high number, but that number I see is the the NEDC number, so I better look for the real ones. So beware, the manufacturers can quote either one at the moment. It's really, really frustrating. So just beware and just check which one. If it's ADR 8102, it's NEDC. If it's WLTP, that'll be the middle one. So if you're driving around town and out of suburban, that'll be good. So that's those numbers there. So hopefully, and if you're curious, Renew edition, to those of you who subscribe to Renew magazine, 155, or I've actually put the same article up on my website, evchoice.au. What does it cost to run an EV? Pretty straightforward. I'll just do a comparison there. The Zoe electric car will do $266 at an off-peak rate, and an internal combustion engine Corolla will do about $1,200. So you're saving, close to $1,000 in fuel for every 10,000 k's. Service savings once a year for the Zoe, it's $200. My Kona's once a year for $165. I think the Kia's even cheaper. Unfortunately, in Victoria, we have our anti-EV tax, so $260 per 10,000, but you're still better off. They're still saving, roughly $900 per 10,000 kilometres. Does an EV go the distance? Well, the first 25 years of petrol cars, there was no petrol pump. It was 2-gallon tins, and that's how people got around. I think we've already passed that stage. We now have all of these DC fast chargers I talked about. If you go to plugshare.com and just filter for DC fast chargers, this is how you find them, and they're all over. And there's a bit of a gap, as you might notice, between there and there. They are filling it in, but it is a bit of a slow. It basically takes me 3 days. It took me 3 days to get across and back across that particular section. If you're in a petrol car, it'd be 2. Mind you, it was relatively, given I was doing a long trip, it was actually quite nice to have that middle section quite restful. Because once you hit Adelaide, it's quite a fast trip. So there's me at the Nullarbor Plain, heading, which way was I going there? Eastern end, so I'm heading to Perth that way. On the way back, and on the way there, the Poochera pub is getting to be quite famous amongst EV drivers that drive to Perth, because you have to stop there. It has a 3-phase outlet. That's where I plug in that adaptable charger, and I can get the maximum AC charge rate on my car, which is 7 kilowatts. For the Teslas, it's 11, so I had to wait there 3 hours to get a much charge to get onto Ceduna. Tesla would wait there for 2. The Megane E-Tech and a few others that are coming soon do 22 kilowatts. I'd only have to stay there for 1 hour. So my next car will have 22 kilowatt AC charging for this sort of trip. The 3-phase outlets and a portable charger that's adaptable to it is a really handy thing to have. So that's probably the 2-gallon tin equivalent when you're really off the beaten track. Otherwise, we're getting good network already. But the future is 89% of charging is done at home. As I said, that other group of is at work, shopping centres, car parks, they'll be putting chargers in, and that's a lot of the consultancy work I do is based around that sort of stuff. There's community chargers, that's down at the Cape. That's the community charger they put in there. There's the Tesla network, the proprietary network. Overseas, that is actually opening up because they use exactly the same plug as everybody else now. So they're actually opening that up overseas, and eventually they will actually open that up as a general use charger for everybody. But in the meantime, we have the NRMA. I love the NRMA. All around New South Wales, there's a free network of chargers at 50 kilowatts, and I've used it extensively. Eventually they're going to put a charge on it, but they're still free as far as I know. That is their flagship one that they put in front of the NRMA building in Sydney, and I voted as the worst placed DC charger in Australia, because you can't actually park in the parking spot. The lead barely reaches the front of my car, even parked there. And if you want to get to some of the cars, it's a one-way street, and you've got to park the wrong way to get to charge it. And there's obviously the public networks, the Charge Fox and the EVs as well. That's they're popping up all over the place. The Ice Age will end. The internal combustion engine is going to be banned for new car sales. Norway is 2025, and they're just passing 90% new cars plug-in. So it's less than 10%. The thing is less than 5% of just petrol diesel vehicles now. And in the EU itself is going to be 2035, and even a number of American states, and I would add them, but I was running out of space. There's about 6 now that have set dates. And the manufacturers have also seen the writing on the wall, and they're going, well, we'll set these dates. Jaguar said 2025, all their cars, new cars will be EV, full battery. And then 2030, there's quite a bunch of them. Every time I pull this slide up, I keep adding them. So I added Maserati and Mercedes to that one when I pulled it up recently. Volvo, by the way, overseas they're going to 2030. Here in Australia, they made the announcement a couple of months ago that 2026 they will only sell full battery electric cars. 2033, VW will end their production in Europe. I'm not quite sure what Mazda, Mitsubishi and Nissan are doing, because theoretically we'll be about the last place in the world that still allows their sale, unless we change our laws. At the moment, they either will be selling here only, or they expect to be out of business by then. Moving right along. There we go. Come on. Oh, there we go. It just actually skipped. It actually skipped the slide. I'll see if I can go back. Yep, there we go. There's a number of cars. Normally I used to list all the cars, but there's now too many. So these are the ones that will be coming soon. A number of interesting ones. The two I would probably pick out in particular would be the MG4. That will probably be the bargain long-range load-carrying vehicle for 2023. So I'd say that's probably the best one to look out for. The Megane E-Tech, in terms of technology, is probably going to be a really interesting car with a very efficient, lighter EV, worth a look as well. And there's a whole pile of others coming. And this is an Araya, which is basically the same platform as the Renault E-Tech, is also hopefully arriving later this year. They keep delaying that one. And I keep saying this year is going to be the year of the light commercial EV. So we've already got the LDV ET60, LDV E-Deliver and the MIFA 9 and the Mercedes EQV. And there's a number of others. The Ford Transit 1.7 tonne is due within the next month or two. I should have changed that. I think it's H1 this year now. They changed it to. Renault Master, Renault updated Kangoo is also coming. Photon box van should be here any time now. Even the Rivian, which is basically the Tesla four-wheel drive, not a Tesla four-wheel drive, it's sort of the equivalent to Tesla, but so upmarket four-wheel drive. People rave about it. There's a sale in the US now, and it should hopefully be here in 2024. Next question I often get is, when can I afford one? Well, they say about 2024 they'll start getting price parity. The MG4, as I said, when it gets here, they're saying around 40 to 45,000, and the first cars that they're expected to be under 40,000 might be here by the end of the year. So there'll be a couple of the BYDs and the Aura Good Cat, strange enough, all made in China, but they will all be lurking around the $39,000. So we're getting down quite quickly. You can buy second-hand cars in Australia. There's been a number around. Many options, few in numbers obviously. 2/3 of an EV is still a car, so do all your usual checks. There are battery and drive functions obviously that you would do instead of the engine and gearbox checks. There are apps you can get for some, put on your phone or a tablet that you can check, and there's a number of them. I won't go through them, but there's different apps that you can find that can actually drill into the detail from the car that normally the manufacturer doesn't put on the dashboard. And there's more information both at the back of the slides and in edition 158 on my website. You can buy private imports, and there's a number of them. Those are the three main ones. Mainly second-hand Japanese. Maps and switches may be in Japanese, so make sure that the importer has done some changes to them. They use the CHAdeMO DC socket still, because Japan was the inventor, or where it was the home of the CHAdeMO, and they still use it, but nobody else does. But on the other hand, CHAdeMO chargers will still be there for quite some time, so you won't see much competition for them, so swings and roundabouts. They do use a Type 1 AC socket. If there's a Japanese import leaf or a very old leaf here, I can't tell if the leaf down there is a Japanese or Australian version. Australian version has the Australian plug. The Japanese import has the Japanese plug. You just need to buy an adapter. No great problem, but just remember, if it looks different, you'll need the adapter. Australian dealers won't touch it, so just beware about that. A Nissan Leaf brought in from Japan, the dealers will not look at. They have different features, different options, different software. You can't really blame them for going, we have a hard enough time keeping up with the EVs here anyway, let alone somebody bringing in one from overseas. So as I say, convenient import, they can seem cheap, but as long as you're aware of those things, they can be a good buy, but just beware. Benefits, I'll just flick through those. No tailpipe pollution, and yes, even running on brown coal in Victoria, I do the carbon accounting about every 5 years for in Renew magazine, and we're now looking at in Victoria, it's less carbon pollution even running on grid power than it is running on petrol. And in Tasmania, about 95% better. Anyway, there's an article in Renew magazine about that if you want to go further, or again, my website's got that article there. Yeah, obviously no coolants, oils, plugs. Really great to see not those being thrown out anymore. Service costs are reduced. Yeah, depending on where you get your electricity, it can be cheap to really cheap to next to nothing if you own solar panels. Okay, when to consider buying one? I won't go into the details. You'll come up with your list of criteria of what you want, be it range, be it towing, be it luggage capacity. I have a not my website, but it's the Australian Electric Vehicle Association website, and I have a series of fact sheets that I write about all the EV models available in Australia. Go to the ava.asn.au and just click on fact sheets, and I've got some copies of them on my windscreen, and you can see what you get. And I update the summary sheet, that one, every month. So that's October. I think it's a September one I've got sitting on there. It's actually up to January. The draft one for February is already ready to go, but obviously changes every week. So I basically finalise it on the first of the month and put it up. So then you can check all your details in summary, and then when you've sort of got down to a few models, you can go to the individual fact sheets, double page, exactly the same headings on all of them, so you can do a direct comparison. And that's where I list those three EV range standards. So I'll do all three of those, the WLTP, NEDC, US EPA, and you can then work out which car is going to suit your needs. And I've also got an article up on the Driven about that. Same thing for second hands, and I actually do a second hand sheet. So if there's a second hand model only now, I'll actually do a second hand sheet on that. Some of the things to look for as they're getting older. Other considerations, I sort of half mentioned them. If you've got an old switchboard, an older house, basically older than 20 years old, you may need to have a partial or full rewire. It's not really the car's fault, but you're probably due for it anyway, especially if it's about 25, 30 plus years old. If you've got an old switchboard, I'm an electrician by background. When I see those switchboards, I just, because you cannot do a thing with them. It's just, they're a completely sealed unit, and you either break it as you're trying to add things. It's just new switchboard time. But then you also need a safety switch and things anyway, so it's time it was done. I have some articles about all of these things. If you've got someone off street to charge, there are issues about strata titles and things. It can be done, and there's more and more options available. There's articles and things, and a lot of my EV consultancy work is based around that. Electricity tariffs, most of the time you're okay, but some people have very high day rates, so just beware, make sure you know what you're paying. If you've got a really cheap off-peak rate, charge overnight. choice of your charging capacities. Yeah, some will actually measure how much solar output you've got, and you can actually tell it only charge on solar. So if you've got solar panels and I only want to use solar, you can get certain chargers that will do that for you. I've talked about the adapters and leads already, so I won't talk more about them. Again, those articles are either your back issues of Renew or at my website. Find out more, there's Renew organisation, there's this Renew, they actually do a lot of articles in Renew. There's always one every quarter for the EVs, so I write at least one every quarter. Second-hand ones, I actually did one on checking second-hand vehicles in January to March last year, and EVs on the Australian Horizon was the one that's come out last quarter, and this quarter I think I've done a sort of a slightly more light-hearted one on EV myth busting. So about I call it 6 of the best of just where did they come from with these things. Australian Electric Vehicle Association also exists, and you can get a lot of information off that. And there's actually a forum, so you don't have to be a member to do the forum, to join the forum and ask questions, and you get lots of good information from the members on that site. Australian websites, I write for The Driven. It's probably it is not just probably the biggest EV focused website in Australia, so it's Australian EV focused. The EV Council, they represent the big end of town, and they're not shy of that. They say represent the electric vehicle industry, but they do have some really good information. Just don't forget that they do represent the big end of town when it comes to vehicles. And my website as well, I do consultancy work for councils and governments, and work with other consultants as well on bigger projects. Any burning questions? The question is, plug-in hybrids, what makes it in Australia? If you go to the AVA Association website, there is actually a list of all the plug-in hybrids available in Australia now. So, and I've actually got it sitting on my wing screen as well, so it's a separate page. There's 3 sheets, one for passenger vehicle EVs, full BEV, one for plug-in hybrids, and one for light commercial vehicles. Now the question is, how much power does the heater and air conditioner use? If it's a modern, I'll go back a step. The first ones use air conditioning, so the heat pump for air conditioning, for the cooling, but they used a resistive element like an electric toaster. So 1 kilowatt of electrical energy produced 1 kilowatt of heat. Whereas a heat pump ones, a reverse cycle air conditioner that we're getting used to now, they have a coefficient of performance. You might put 1 kilowatt of energy in to do the work, and you might get 4 kilowatts of heat out of it, because it pumps heat. It sucks heat from the outside and throws it into the cabin. That's how a heat pump works. The early cars had the heat pump for the air conditioning, which they always have been, but uses the resistive element like a toaster to heat. And they are very good with the air conditioning, but awful with the heating. So you might knock 5% off for the air conditioner and 15% off for the heater. For the newer ones, they put a heat pump in, so you're losing 5 to 8% heating or cooling. So some cars still put resistive element in. The Polestar, for instance, their base model resistive element, one of the option packs is a heat pump. Yep. The question is, if you've got, say, an AC charging capability of 11 or 22 in your car, why can't I put a bigger than 7 kilowatt in my home? If you've got a single phase house, 7 kilowatts is the highest you can go. But if you've got a 3-phase house, you can put it up to 22. So you put 32 amps of all 3 phases. So do you have 3-phase or single phase? 2-phase, you're going to still only be a single phase as far as the charge is concerned. Yeah. So if you want really fast AC charging, you need to install 3-phase, but you can still get an overnight full charge, 0 to 100, even at 7 kilowatts.
Thank you, Bryce.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Bryce.
Okay. If you look at the bottom of that slide, my email address is there, or just evnews@bigpond.com, or chat to me afterwards.
Thanks again, Bryce. That was terrific. I'd also like, before I introduce Christian Slattery, I'd like to we're going to pass this around. This is just a QR code. You'll notice that we're filming the event today, and thank you very much to Dave Powers, who's here to film the event. He's also speaking to EV owners, to our solar providers, and so we'll have this recording. You'll be able to find it via the TRPI website. And so if we pass this around and you want to just take a photo of that, it'll take you to the website if you want to make a contact with us. So that'll be sort of in the near future, we hope to do that. We've now got Christian Slattery. Christian works for Council, and Christian is our Climate Emergency Project Officer. And Christian's going to speak to us about the Council's plans for rolling out the EV charge system across the Shire. So welcome, Christian.
Hello everyone, very nice to be here. Can you hear me all right? Great. I'd just like to acknowledge the Bunurong people before I kick off my comments as the traditional custodians of the land that we're on, and just acknowledge any Bunurong people or elders here today, and elders past and present as well. So yeah, my name's Christian. I'm the Climate Emergency Project Officer at Bass Coast Council, and I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. It's a great night for it, and yeah, it's really great to be here with all of you tonight to talk about what the clean energy future looks like for our community. Just before I kick off, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Mary and to Zoe and to Nerily and to others at Totally Renewable Phillip Island, and to all of the EV owners who brought their cars along tonight. So thanks very much for putting this event on. So my role with Council is to help deliver on Council's Climate Change Action Plan, which was a plan that kicked off a couple of years ago in 2021 with the ambition of achieving net zero emissions by 2030, both for Council operationally, but also, and probably more significantly, achieving that goal for our entire community by 2030. So my role is to support the work that Council's doing and support the work that our community is doing to hit those goals. So I'm going to talk about a couple of different projects that we're working on at the moment. Before I do that though, I just wanted to do a quick straw poll. I know Bryce was asking earlier how many of you have got an EV. I wanted to ask two different questions. The first one being, how many of you think that the next car that you buy will be either petrol or diesel? All right, have a look around. And how many of you think that the next car you buy will be an electric vehicle? Right, all right, that's pretty much everyone here, which is really interesting. In fact, maybe we've got a slightly skewed audience here today, but a study came out just last week, a poll of Australians across the country, and that study was saying that about 40% of Australians think that their next car will be an EV, and that number's only tracking upwards. Obviously, we've got a really passionate community down here and passionate crowd of people here tonight, which is really great. What I wanted to, the couple of projects that I wanted to give you a very brief update on tonight are Council's plans to install electric vehicle charging stations at public sites for public use. Some of the EV chargers that we're putting in to support the transition of Council's fleet vehicles to electric, and also a public transport on-demand trial that we're hoping to roll out for Phillip Island and San Remo. I'll come to exactly what that means in a moment. So in terms of the public charging stations, this is something that we're working on currently with the state government to provide electric vehicle fast charging stations right across Bass Coast. So we're looking at putting them in Wonthaggi, in Granville, in Newhaven on the island, and in Inverloch as well. So these would be 50 kilowatt chargers. I think Bryce probably ran through the numbers. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty familiar with what all the watts and the numbers and the technology, but essentially what this means is that they'll provide about 100 kilometres of range in about 10 minutes, or you can get to sort of 80% charge in about 45 minutes. So they're really quite rapid chargers. And the locations that we're putting them in, the idea is that they'll be in places where you can go and get a coffee, or people who might be tourists to the island might be at the Visitor Information Centre down in Newhaven, plug the car in, drop in, pick up a few brochures, and then go on their way with a fully charged up EV. So this is part of a broader strategy that the Victorian government's pursuing at the moment. They're looking to roll out a network of EV chargers right across the state, about 140 chargers statewide. So yeah, our chargers fit in as part of that broader network. We've been working with local governments right across Gippsland to install a coherent network of chargers right across those shires. And this charging infrastructure is really important, not just because it will help to set us up for the infrastructure that we need to actually be able to charge on the go, but also because it builds supply chains, it builds local knowledge, it builds jobs, it builds expertise and capacity to actually deliver this sort of infrastructure. Because we're really, as Bryce has said, we're right at this we're towards the beginning of this transition, so we're going to need a lot more infrastructure as we go along it as well. So building that capacity is really important. So that's a little bit about the public charging station project. We're hoping to have those chargers in and operational by the end of the year. The next project I wanted to talk to you about are the council EV chargers. So we're working on a project at the moment at council's offices, because one of the things that we're looking to do is transition our vehicle fleet off petrol and hybrid vehicles and onto electric vehicles. And getting those charging stations operational at our own facilities is a really important, well, a critical stepping stone to enable us to start making that vehicle transition with our fleet. One of the really great parts of this story is that council's now powered entirely by 100% renewable energy. So we're part of a power purchase agreement with 50 other councils right across Victoria. And that's called the Victorian Energy Collaboration, or the VECO partnership, where all of those councils got together. They signed one big energy deal to source their energy from wind power stations in Western Victoria. So when we're charging those vehicles, we're not just charging them off the Victorian energy grid. We're going to be charging them off 100% renewable energy. So that's a really, really great win as well. And of course, long term, once we've got a fully electric fleet, and even while we're on the way to getting there, the long-term cost of ownership of electric vehicles is continuing to come down and it is undercutting the cost of ownership of petrol vehicles. So long term, that means more money that can be reinvested back into community programs and projects as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about the council charges that we're working to put in. I guess the other benefit of the fleet transition that we're working on at the moment, and that actually a lot of state, federal government agencies, departments, and even major corporations at the moment in transitioning their fleets over to EVs. One of the great things about that is that's going to start flowing through into helping to build more of a second-hand market for electric vehicles. That's obviously really important because it's great how many people are already buying EVs, but to make them really affordable for everyone to be able to buy them, we need to increase the volume of them, increase that second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand market. So it just becomes, you're not just buying an electric vehicle, you're just going out and buying a car. So that's the two electric vehicle charging projects that we're working on. The final project I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about is called Public Transport on Demand. Does anyone know what public transport on demand is, or on-demand public transport? A couple of keen beans down the front. To explain what public transport on demand is, it's essentially a form of public transport that doesn't use fixed routes. It picks people up from it's a door-to-door service. So the idea would be that you can use like a smartphone app, or you can call a phone line ahead, book in your time, and then the public transport algorithm will work out, will get you from route A to your destination. And what's really smart about it is the algorithm will work out the most efficient route to pick up people all over a location and then drop them off at their locations. So we ran a study last year, a feasibility study that we worked on in partnership with the state government and with Destination Phillip Island, and that included quite a bit of community consultation. And that looked into what would a model of on-demand public transport look like for our region. And really interestingly, the best model that came back in terms of providing a really good service for users and also the lowest operating costs was a model that uses electric buses. So it was like 3 kind of electric mini buses that would be zipping around Phillip Island and San Remo, picking people up when they want to be picked up, dropping them off at their door front. So that's a model that we've been exploring. It's something that we're really interested in running a 3-year pilot program of, which would cover Phillip Island to San Remo. We're now at the stage where we've got a really good model for it, and we're seeking funding for it. So that's the stage we're at. We're going out, we're advocating to state and federal governments for that funding. We need $6.25 million for it. But hopefully we'll be able to get that program up, and I'm really excited to see that happening down here. I think that'd be a terrific initiative for the area. So look, that's a bit of a really rapid overview of some of the programs that we're working on in the transport space at Bass Coast. Really happy to field a few questions now, but also happy to, we've got one straight away, also really happy to engage more, you come and find me. I'm just floating around, so come up and introduce yourself and have a chat.
Christian, the public ones you're putting in, will they be tethered, and what will the charge be?
Yeah, so they'll be 50 kilowatt chargers, and they will have both a CCS2 and a Chatamo charger. So they'll be able to service, well, any electric vehicle, that's on the market at the moment.
And what will the charging be?
So, the cost? Yeah, so our charging rate is 40 cents a kilowatt hour, which is the same rate as across Gippsland. Actually, all of the Gippsland councils have got a 40 cents a kilowatt hour charge price. Yeah.
So I appreciate you going to start somewhere for basically mentioned that New Haven. I appreciate it's at a council property, but not the most, it's not cows, for example. I guess if you look to roll out, say on the island, at least one or two more particular cows, etc.
Yeah, well, so we've got the transit centre at the moment, but that only has 7 kilowatt chargers. I know they're pretty slow. So there is a private company as well that's installing some chargers down here. They're going to be putting them in Cowes and in San Remo as well. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's going to need to be a lot more infrastructure right across the state, to be honest. So yeah, look, I think that's probably right to see this as more of a starting point. But yeah, that's the plan at the moment, is to put those 4 chargers in and to get them going. They are more destination chargers. Obviously, a lot of the charging that will happen for us as local residents down here will happen in our homes, and we'll be zipping around. So these chargers are probably more aimed actually at holidaymakers and tourists who are coming down maybe from Melbourne or from other parts of the state, and that's why we're locating them in areas where there's cafes, where there's tourist information, where there's toilets for people to use, and so they might stop there for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then continue on to, either their accommodation or a tourist, they might be going down to the Penguins or whatever it is. Yeah. All right, do we have any more questions? We do. I'll take one, and then I'll take Zoe's, and then I'll leave it there and come and find me afterwards. Yeah, good question. So the question was, what about rubbish collection trucks and electric vehicles? I don't have an update for you on that one. I mean, personally, I would love to see that. It is a bit more of a challenge, obviously, than passenger vehicles at this stage. But I do know of some other councils that have been experimenting with electric trucks. So yeah, it's something that we're keenly aware of and are looking at. But I think it's one of those things that's more on the horizon than in the immediacy. The immediate focus is really getting the vehicles that can transition immediately off, so like our passenger vehicles, our lighter fleet of vehicles, getting them to EVs first because they're the low-hanging fruit, and then ramping up from there. One more question, and then I'll...
So I'm just curious about like electric car share networks with sort of neighbourhood charging infrastructure. If there's anything on the horizon about setting something like that up?
Sounds like you might have a few ideas there, Zoe. Look, nothing that I'm aware of, but sorry, yes, the question was about local car sharing networks using electric vehicles. So council doesn't have any plans in that area, but who knows? Who knows what the future might hold down here, whether it's private, whether it's government initiatives. I think we're in a really interesting time, and the next 10 years are going to be, well, the next 3 years, the next 18 months are going to be a really exciting space in this electric vehicle environment. So. All right, I might leave it there.
We have just one more.
Oh, we got one more question up the back. Sorry.
I missed the beginning. You may have answered this already, but the chargers you're putting in, will they have Chatamos and this and that?
Yes, they will. So the chargers we're putting in will have Chatamo chargers. Yeah.
Thank you, Christian. That's been very interesting. Thank you very much. I would like now to introduce our Mayor, Michael Whelan. Michael is showing great leadership across the Shire. I'm a bit biased, of course. People might know that Michael is my husband. So I'm allowed to be proud of him, and I am. And Mike's done a wonderful job in terms of leading the climate action plan for Bass Coast Shire, and we're very appreciative, Michael, of your effort. But I've asked Mike just to speak to you about just to give the Mayor's perspective on, and Christian has filled us in a lot on what actually the council on the ground is doing. But Mike, have you got a couple of words just to tell people?
Yes, it's really nice that my wife thinks I'm doing a good job. So you can't get endorsement there, I guess you're in some trouble. Just want to say that Council is very committed to its climate action plan, and the transition to low emission vehicles is a key part of that. And we're pushing it very hard, and Council will be transitioning. I think, as Christian said, part of the move is also that we'll be providing fleet recharging facilities as well at Council premises. So that's a real advance. But two comments I'd like to make, because I call it demand responsive transport. Christian called it something else, but it's the same thing. But through SECA, which is the South East Council's Climate Change Alliance, we've done a lot of advocacy with politicians and all of that. And we also, with heads of department, and the Secretary of the Department of Transport knew all about this proposal, very keen on it. The only thing we need is a bit of budget commitment. So that's part of my job, is that advocacy, to take it to government and to really push for that funding from government at both levels. We did meet with the current Federal Minister, Chris Bowen, prior to him becoming the Minister, and a lot of what he said he was going to do, he is out there and doing, and I'm really pleased to see that. And just one other comment I'd like to make, it's in terms of the rollout of the charging fleet. It won't be just councils that do this, and it shouldn't be, because we don't want to undermine that commercial model as well. So as we roll out, we'll move to a charging model, and there's too many chargings there where you will have to pay for it. But it's really, you see the likes of Ampol are rolling out 250 new sites. We want to see more of that, so we don't want to undermine that. So local government and government generally needs to work in harmony with the industry. So we're very mindful of that. The targets we've set in the Climate Action Plan are for the whole of the community. So we're really being ambitious for zero net emissions by 2030. We really need you on board to do that. So we're looking, and part of Christian's job is really how can we work with the community to help that transition. So that's what we're all about, and we are very serious. We won't always get it right, but we're very serious and we're pushing ahead strongly on our plan. Thanks, Mary.
And Werner is running a sustainable electricity course through U3A, and we'd like Werner, I've given him 5 minutes to tell us why we need to run, why there is a sustainable electricity course running, and what people are going to learn from it. Thank you, Werner.
Hi, my name's Werner Twilight. I've worked all of my life in the power industry. I've worked in the State Electricity Commission Victoria, all of the power stations down in the valley. I spent some time overseas in Bahrain, at the aluminium Bahrain, also Qatar Gas, 12 years overseas. Then I came back in 2003, working in the valley, mainly at Yallourn and Loy Yang B. So most of the last period was operations training. So I spent all the last 15, 20 years in front of classes, talking about electricity and power generation. So, now I've now retired, and we're now running a course at U3A, University of the Third Age in Wonthaggi, all about electricity and the future of renewable energy. Last year I also did one at BCAL, Bass Coast Adult Learning. So I was doing 2 of these courses all at the same time, so it was great fun. The U3A course was full house. There wasn't a seat in the house, wasn't a spare seat in the place. We've now booked out 19 this year for the first semester, and next semester we'll be doing a course at BCAL. So if you're interested in a little bit of the past, the present and the future renewable energies and the transition, come and sign up at U3A and BCAL, and we'll fit you in. I'm also the proud owner of for 2.5 years of a Nissan Leaf. It was an import from Japan. Apparently Nissan Australia don't service or recognise imported cars. They're all imported, I think. I've done 30,000 kilometres, and in that time I've spent $15 at the Maui Folk Museum filling up twice. So 30,000 kilometres, $15. I think that's pretty good. All the rest has been charged at home, solar power. I've got a Zappy charger which looks after that whole thing and it puts all the sunshine power into my little car. So I'm a very, very proud owner. And I'm waiting, seriously waiting for V2G. And I've been waiting for 2.5 years now. Recently I saw a wonderful website called FermataEnergy.com, a USA company, and they've been approved by Nissan to do 10 kilowatts both ways, to the car and from the car. So the revolution is here. Thank you very much. Any questions? And just give us a hoy.
Thank you, Werner. Thank you. John, can you come and talk to us? Now, John Lovell, we've asked John to come because John has navigated that the whole process of understanding the technology and how to set up a home solar system that you're very happy with, and you can tell us the key messages in setting up your home solar.
Thank you very much. I suppose when we go back to our grandparents' day, they had to learn about new technology called the automobile. And I think as somebody said before that the first few cars were filled up with tin cans, and that was the latest in technology. And then when the PC and the computer revolution came out, we all had to learn a new way of speaking about megabits and megabytes, and then the internet. So what I'm trying to say here is this is another one where we're going to have to learn the technology, and the suppliers that are out there, and there's some good ones out there, they talk in their language, and it's, I can say to you, do your research, but then I tried that, and it's a very complex market. And then I went to government websites, and I didn't understand them very well either. So it's not just me, I think it's just that we're all having to go through this transition as we learn a new technology and a new way of speaking as we transition our home technology as well. I'm going to give you 3 lessons that I learnt. I think here in Phillip Island, and maybe Bass, but particularly Phillip Island where I live, I would say go local. The vendors down here, and there are 2 represented here, and there's one at Granville, there's BWD here, I think there's Island Energy, and there's Sunscape Solar. They know our environment. They know we're close to the beach, they know about the salt, they know about all those types of stuff. I phoned up people at Tarrogin, Moe, Morwell, Leon, wherever I found a solar person to try and get them to talk to me, and they were great, but they didn't understand our environment, and I think that helped a lot when I was able to go local. So talk to the local people, they understand the environment, plus if something goes wrong, you know where they live. The next thing is, people say, are batteries worth it? Is it worth putting in the batteries? Is the return on investment? Well, if you're doing it for that, I'm not too sure whether you can actually say that's a valid argument. I wasn't doing it for that. My calculation is my return on investment on the batteries I put in, which were not lithium ion, they're lithium titanate, was about 10 years. But as electricity prices have gone up in those 2.5 years, that return on investment has gone down to 7 years. And I suspect that as electricity prices go up, we've been told it's going to go up by 50%, that'll bring it down to about 5 years. I've had the system for 3 years, so I've only got 2 years to go, and then I'm basically hit at break even. Last year I was off the grid 77.05% of the time. In winter I was 56.3%. So my electricity bill for winter was reduced by just over half, which where we live, that's not bad. In summer I'm returning stuff to the grid. I'm not getting a lot of return on that. If I had my way, I would not like to return stuff to the grid. I'd rather store it somewhere else.
In the community battery maybe.
In the community battery maybe, yes.
Future.
Because let's face it, you're getting 6 cents a kilowatt back. It just doesn't seem worth it. Look, I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you very much for the invitation. And if you've got any questions about, I'm not here to advocate a product, I'm just representing the community and my personal experiences in dealing with the transition to semi off the grid. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John. Now, our last person who we haven't heard from yet is Sarah. Sarah Disher is a co-owner of a Tesla 3, and we've asked Sarah to just tell us the best things. We've got 15 EVs here today, and we thank every one of the owners who are here sharing their stories. But we've asked Sarah if she'd just give us the key messages that she, as an owner, what it's like owning your own EV.
Thank you. So I suppose it's been a bit of a journey. We got our Tesla Model 3 back in 2019. We've done over 100,000 kilometres in it now. We've done trips to Queensland and back multiple times in it. It just makes longer journeys so much easier to travel because although you're still behind the wheel, it's not as exhausting as it is behind a combustion engine because you've got a lot of safety, and a lot of other ICE vehicles out there do as well. But Teslas, for example, we've got 360-degree views of everything going around, and it saved us 2 insurance claims when people have door dinged us because we had that security footage. So it's a different way of thinking about a vehicle. It's more of I see it as a computer on wheels, pretty much. And for medical reasons and things like that, for drivers, can be so much safer as well. And charging network availability is not as bad as people think it is when you're going on longer road trips, and it's getting so much better. We ourselves, in that 100,000 kilometres that we've travelled, we've only had to wait once in a line for a charger, because you're normally there for 15 to 20 minutes to get enough to get to the next stop. So it's not as if you're having to sit there for hours upon hours charging, and people don't realise this. So my message out there is go and hire one, test it out for yourselves. It's just a different lifestyle of having that availability. But yeah, it's definitely worth a try for everybody. You've got to at least try everything once, is what I live by, and it's changed mine and my husband's life. So if you've got any questions, we're at the black Model 3 right behind us. More than happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Sarah. That's terrific. So now we've got Sarah, we've got Werner, we've got John, we've got Bryce, and we've got Christian. So now we can take some more questions. So if you've got a question, decide who do you want to direct your question to, and we'll have a couple of minutes of questions. Anyone got a question? Yes. Who are you asking? Bryce? Bryce, yes. So the question is about different batteries. Sodium batteries versus lithium.
It's a long story of the batteries. For cars, the systems are pretty much settled on the lithium batteries at the moment, because they're basically the most energy dense for the cars. So there's tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars going into the manufacturing of the current styles of lithium batteries. So they will slowly evolve, and they are, but they're not going to change. It's not like a beta versus VHS type setup. It's already, the VHS is being settled on, so to speak. But for home battery systems, that's another ballpark, because the energy density is not so important. So it'll be price that'll drive it, and they will probably end up being different chemistries. Does that help?
I can't hear it, so.
Oh, sorry. Is it?
Did everybody didn't hear it?
Oh, sorry. Is it?
A bit closer. Sorry.
I'll try not to get the feedback.
Sorry.
I'm sitting directly behind the speaker. Sorry about that. No, I was saying about the battery chemistries. For cars, it's pretty much settled on the basic lithium chemistries. and they'll evolve slowly, but there's hundreds of billions of dollars gone into those factories, so they're not going to change overnight. So the dry cell batteries, the solid state batteries and things that are coming on the horizon, we've been saying for some time, they will be a long way off, purely because they put so much money into the current battery technologies. They're not going to change in a hurry. So some cars will start coming out with that in the next 5 to 10 years, but it just, batteries will get you 500 k's now in say 70 kilowatt hour battery. You don't really need more than that, because you just stop at the chargers. As the chargers keep popping up, you probably don't even need 500k range anymore. So as far as home batteries are concerned, then that's going to be a different ballpark, and whatever's the cheapest, and because they don't care about how big the battery is, it's just got to be cheap.
Thank you. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for the question. Anyone else got a question to any of our panellists? Yes, Luke. About trucks? Trucks and maybe towing are probably the questions we probably haven't heard much about. Is that the thing? You might just stand up again.
Yeah, I'll try and avoid the feedback from the microphone and the speaker as I stand behind it. For trucks, this, as I said, for light commercial vehicles, this is the year for the light commercial vehicle. The BYD ET60 dual cab is now available. I wouldn't rush out and buy one, because they're actually selling in New Zealand for $79,990 on the road. They're selling for $100,000 on the road here. You go figure. Somebody's trying to make a bit of a profit at the moment, so I wouldn't rush to buy them. But there is another one coming later this year. There's a number of 1-ton vans turning up. For the bigger trucks, the articulated trucks, Tesla, I had a picture of it on my slide. They're actually started deliveries. There's a number of others, Mercedes, E-Actos, and several others are coming in, and they're articulated 30-40-ton trucks. And they'll do, at the moment, 200-300 k's. They're talking 400-500 k's per charge within the next 12-18 months. So that's sort of the next transition about to happen, is your trucking. So your light trucks are now, and there's a number of them coming in. Trying to think of too many different models of cars. Here's one of the Mercedes 1-tonners, the 1.7 tonne. There's about half a dozen will be here by the end of this year, of Mercedes, Renault, and a couple of others. The fact sheets, there's actually now one on light commercial vehicles. So what's here and what's coming are listed on that sheet.
So just another question then about towing. Have you just hold it up a bit closer?
Yep, there you go. Towing is an interesting one. If you look at the fact sheets, probably the easiest way, there's anything from 2 tonne plus for passenger cars now. The Polestar there, I think, is about 1,800 kilos. A number of them are sort of, I think the BYD is 750 kilos, the MG is 500, the Tesla is 1 tonne. But if you take the fact sheets, the towing ratings are there. It's just a lot of the manufacturing very lazy, didn't bother rating their cars for towing rather than they can't tow. Electric vehicles should be better to tow than a petrol car, because it has more torque. 0 revs, maximum torque.
Thank you. Have we got any other questions? Or while you're thinking about another question, I'm just going to ask Zoe Geyer if she'd come up. Zoe is the coordinator of Totally Renewable Phillip Island. And Totally Renewable Phillip Island, along with the Energy Innovation Co-op, we are joint in a project about the community battery, about a project to do with the community battery. So I'll get Zoe just to give us an update on that, and just a little bit of background and an update.
Thanks, Mary. And can everyone hear me okay? Fantastic. So I might start just by, for those who don't know, explaining that there is a big battery coming to the island. The rumour is it's actually here now, but it's being tested and commissioned before a big launch. So how big is the battery? It's, I don't know, about the size of a shipping container or something. It's 5 megawatts or 10 megawatt hours. So it's pretty massive. So that's sort of being done as an extension of the infrastructure to help stabilise the grid. But what we're doing as part of that, and it's Totally Renewable Phillip Island with Energy Innovation Co-op and Mondo, we're actually looking at a 12-month tariff trial with 100 households on the island. So the whole point of this is working out how we can actually use a battery that's on the island, part of the infrastructure, to look at community energy sharing. So basically it's open for households who have solar, households who don't. people who are renting, people who own, single households, families. So it's looking at how we basically embrace this change in technology and bring along all of our community as well. So we've been working on this project, how long narrowly? Maybe a year and a half. And if all goes well, and if I could find some wood I would touch it, the trial will start at the end of April this year and run for 12 months. So this is the first that we know of retail virtual storage tariff trial in Victoria. So it's pretty exciting. We're pretty lucky to have it here on the island, and it's got some very interesting points in terms of what the future of energy sharing in communities could be. So we do have 100 households signed up, but we haven't actually had them sign on the dotted line. In fact, I can see a few people in the audience who have signed up. So if anyone is still interested, do come and talk to us. We can put you down on the wait list as well. But we're incredibly excited to see the next step of this when we actually go into this trial period. And as I said, we're sort of probably maybe 2 to 3 weeks away from actually having that next tangible stage of pushing the go button and knowing which way we're going to go with this trial. So it's a very exciting time. Everything's innovative, everything has its risks and challenges, and so we're just working through some of those knots and tangles on the pathway there. But we're very ambitious and we're very committed, and we're very much looking at the future of community energy. So go Phillip Island, go Bass Coast, and we'll see where we can get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Any other questions now? Yes, we have a couple of questions. Yes, this man here, you tell us what it... Yeah.
When my car battery gets to the end of its life, what can I expect to get as to use battery?
So when your car battery gets to the end of its life, what can you expect to get for that battery, or to replace the battery? Is that what, just to use one?
Yep, that's a very good question. The batteries in cars don't die after 8 years. That's the warranty is for 8 years. They're guaranteed for at least 70 to 80% of capacity still at the end of that 8 years. They're finding, even Nissan are finding their Leaf batteries, they're getting low in range, but they're saying that most of their batteries are still in the original cars. So that's 10, 12 years. The rest of those were turning 11. So the batteries are lasting quite well. That's the first part of it. The second part is they don't die when they reach that point where you want to replace them. They've just got a bit too short a range for your use. So either you pass the car on to someone who takes a shorter range. That's what's happened to a lot of the Leaves. If people have bought them, they're happy to have it just a little run around town. Third part of it is when they actually have the battery replaced. Original battery in Leaf was about $30,000 they had replaced in the first few years, but they're all done under warranty, so they cost nothing. After 8 years, they were down to about 10 grand with about $1,000 to replace them. There's some people now actually doing replacement packs that will give you a bigger range. There's one available for the iMEV now that will double the range, and that's about $13,000 fitted, so long as you give them the old battery. It's 16.5, I think, or 16,750 if you keep the battery. So the battery itself, yes, is about 90+% recyclable, but the systems aren't fully in place to do that yet because there just haven't been enough batteries to build up the economy of scale to get there. So that's part of the problem with the Nissan Leaf batteries, for instance, are still in there. But there are companies setting up to recycle them now. So that's another part of it. You probably will never get paid for the battery, but you will get a discount for handing the battery in for the next one. So does that answer your question? A quick one on that one. I actually had my battery replaced in the Kona 2 weeks ago under warranty. That was a part of that recall that they did. Some that went up. 17 caught fire around the world out of 70,000, so I replaced 70,000 batteries. Just very good brand, buying the brand image. I'm very happy. I have a brand new battery in mine. Originally they were about $30,000 again to replace when that was 3.5 years ago. The dealer was saying that they're $18,000 retail for the battery, $15,000 was his trade price. They've already come down massively. Give you an idea of prices for replacement, even if you had to pay for it.
Thank you. Was there another question along here? If not, while you're thinking questions, I'm going to ask Lee Hocking to come up. This is an impromptu, Lee. You don't know this yet, but doesn't even know what I'm going to ask him. But what I'm going to ask him is if he talks to us about how he uses his solar system at home and how he can monitor it and get that best value for money.
Thanks, Mary. So I've got a bit closer. Everybody hear me? I've got a Tesla Model 3. It's done about 37,000 kilometres now. It records how you charge it if you tell it what price you're paying. So if you use a supercharger going into state, it's about 60 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about half the cost of petrol. If you use the charger in Cows, it's zero. The council's provided one. At home, if you assume that what you, if you've got solar panels, if you assume that the cost is what you get when you sell back to the grid, that's 6 cents a kilowatt hour, which means you can charge the battery in that car up for about $3, which gets you about 450 kilometres. I know there are expensive chargers for $1,500-$1,600 that people are encouraged to install when they buy an electric car. I got a 32 amp outlet fitted by an electrician, cost me $300 and a plug. And frankly, I hardly ever use it. 85% of the charge that's gone into my car over 18 months is what you could get from an ordinary 10 amp outlet, because you treat it like your mobile phone. You plug it in when you get home and let it trickle into it. So I've got an app for my solar panels, which I imagine a number of you that have got solar panels would have. It tells me what the solar panels are making. I've got an app for the car which tells me where I can set with a little slider how much to charge into it. I balance them so that whatever the solar panels are making goes straight into the car. Hence, you know, either 6 cents a kilowatt hour or virtually nothing. Now, you can buy an expensive gadget that will do that for you automatically. I frankly think they're a little bit overpriced, because with a little bit of care you can do it yourself, and it's extraordinarily cheap to run.
Thank you, Lee. That's terrific. Anybody got any more questions about that? Just hang for a sec. There might be another question about that. No? I wonder, when you're saying, like Bryce was talking about older houses, older switchboards, you're in a new house and you've got, you know, so would that be a factor, Bryce, do you think, in terms of, you know, just using the trickle charge, or just, can you comment on that?
As I said, a 10 amp power point isn't made to take 10 amps constantly, but if you're charging off solar, it doesn't pull 10 amps, it pulls 6, 8 amps. It goes up and down, that's the point. A 10 amp power point will happily handle a 6 amps light solar load, and if you set it up for that, that's fine. And it will work forever pretty much at that, unless it's a really old battered power point, in which case it will not, but it's pretty rare. I was talking about if you're using your power point to pull 10 amps at the 2 kilowatts, all the time you were doing lots of kilometres, you will melt the power point eventually. So they're just not built to handle 20 hours plus of 10 amps. They just get warmer and warmer. And as soon as they get warm, they start loosening the pins. And as soon as the pins get loose, it's basically a higher resistance connection, which gets hot. The higher the resistance is more heat. As soon as it starts getting more heat into it, it starts loosening more. So it's a cascading failure. So that pair of pictures I showed you was actually in one charging event. It just basically went downhill that fast, and they just melt.
So that's pretty much without solar, is what we're hearing here. Yep. Yeah. So there's a big message there, and Lee's done that really well. Do you ever charge overnight?
If I have to go somewhere in the morning and I need a full battery, or if it hasn't charged up enough by the method that I described, I will charge overnight. But if people have got a time of use tariff, charging overnight can be extremely cheap as well. Dearer than straight solar, but significantly cheaper than the average tariff that you would pay for your normal consumption of power, which I'd guess at roughly 25 cents a kilowatt hour. At 25 cents a kilowatt hour, even if you just charge it, you haven't got solar panels, if you charge your car at 25 cents a kilowatt hour, you're still paying less than a quarter the cost of petrol, even at that price.
Thank you, Lee. Have a seat over there in case we've got more questions for you. Yes, there's another. Oh, sorry. Do you want to speak about that?
Was it Lee or your name then? Lee. Yes. He also said he had a 32 amp power point. That's actually what I use at home at the moment. I actually have put an industrial 32 amp power point, and that portable charger I was talking about, I use that in. It's a really solid connection. I screw it together. I trust that implicitly it won't melt. So if you can put a 32 amp outlet and use that portable charger, that's another option. Because I keep saying a 10 amp power point is, if you're doing a lot of Ks and always using 10 amp power point, that's where the problem will be. But low power through solar, that'll be okay, or 32 amp outlet and use a portable charger that's adaptable with a 32 amp socket, that's also quite good. It's just that in between, high power, lots of charging through a 10 amp power point, that's the problematic area.
Thank you. We've got a question here, and while this man's thinking about his question, we're going to just prime Steve Fury up there just to come up in a minute and tell us about his experience with his Zero motorbike. Tell us your question, sir.
That's a good question. Are there any house fires is the question from a 10 amp power point melting? No, it's some people had burnt them down from plug-in stoves and things. Generally the car's outside, so that would be part of the problem, or part of the issue is less of a problem. More the issue is the cheap e-scooters and bicycles being charged in the house, and they have been starting a number of fires, and there's been quite a campaign going on at the moment to be very careful of cheap chargers, cheap lithium batteries. Cars have very expensive chargers and very carefully maintained batteries and very good quality batteries. As I said, Hyundai had 17 car fires around the world out of 70,000 of the first batch. They recalled all 70,000 and replaced the batteries. That's how seriously they take it. So it's car fires in EVs. The stats are the American, a big insurance company over there did the stats recently, and it was for plug-in, for hybrid cars, it was roughly 3,000 fires per 100,000 sales, new car sales. For petrol cars, it was about 1,500, and for electric vehicles, it was 25. So if you don't want a car that catches fire, don't buy a hybrid.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to introduce Steve Fury. Steve owns an e-motorbike and is pretty happy about it. So tell us what's good about owning an e-motorbike.
Look, Bryce, I think you asked me before about what I liked about it. I said absolutely everything, and I'm not lying. People who ride a motorbike, you generally jump on them because of the feeling of G-forces and the wind and the feeling of freedom you get. I love pipes, but electric motorbikes take it one step further. So you just have that immense feeling of freedom still, but you can feel everything. You can hear it. I hear birds in the trees. I hear cows in the paddock. First time I rode the bike, I had to stop it and got off and kicked the front tyre because I thought it was going flat. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just never heard it before. That's the noise it makes. So it's just, it's incredible, and the acceleration's just phenomenal. So for those of you that don't know, they make motorbikes in electric. Zero, this brand, has been making them for about 17 years in the States. So they've been around for a while, and all of the majors are now committing to a timeline where they're all going to bring them out. And we're going to see this year Ducati having Moto E class racing in the MotoGP races. There's about 6 of those races in Europe in that circuit where they have that class. Absolutely no tyre preservation strategy at all. They just go as hard as they can. It's incredible racing. So if you manage to find some on TV, definitely worth watching.
That sounds good. So Steve, tell us a bit about when you go touring and how you manage the charging.
Like you saw before, plug share. I just gauged my range against the next charger. So, last year I planned a trip across. I wanted to go find an excuse to go across the Alps and be the first person to do that. So the Eldorado Off-Grid Living Festival presented that opportunity. So I looked on PlugShare and planned my trip accordingly. So I went from home to Traralgon, charged there, went across through up to Dargo and camped overnight. Plugged in off the mushroom at the caravan park, thanks very much, and then up over the mountains, Harrietville pub, onto a winery somewhere, I forget, and onto that. And there you go. It's not hard to do, but lots of fun. Terrific ride.
Anyone else ride a motorbike here who would think about an e-motorbike? Yes, Michael Nugent. He's got an EV, but next thing's a motorbike. All right. Any other questions? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Look, I think we might wrap it up now if there's no more questions. Oh yes, there is. Bernie has a question. I know he's got it talking to Steve. So look, thanks everybody for coming, and a big thank you again to Rotary for inviting us to be part of the event today. Now, and also I'll just have we'll have this here if anybody wants to know more about Totally Renewable Phillip Island. And if you take this, just do the QR code, just photograph it. We can then, that'll link you to our site, and we hope to have this recording. We might have Bryce's presentation as well, or certainly a link to that. And we'll have something from Werner, something from John. So everybody who's been here today, we'll try and record that for just for people to have a reference back to it. So I think we might leave it at that. Thanks very much for coming. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and thank you. Thanks very much.